won't believe how close I came to losing everything, not to a stranger, not to an enemy, but to my own sister. If you think family is always your safe place, your shelter from the world, I want you to stay with me until the end, because the day I realized my sister was trying to erase me from our family was the day I learned that betrayal can come from the person you trust most. Before I begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Have you ever felt like someone in your own family was working against you or hiding something you couldn't see? Share your story or your city below. And don't go anywhere, because what happened to me could happen to anyone, and the warning signs are easier to miss than you think. My name is Evelyn, and for most of my life, I believed in the power of family. I believed that no matter what happened, no matter how hard life got, my sister and I would always have each other. We were only 2 years apart, and growing up, we were inseparable. We shared secrets, dreams, and even clothes. Our parents used to joke that we were two halves of the same heart. I believed it. I wanted to believe it. We grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows your name and your business. Our parents worked hard. Dad at the local hardware store, Mom as a nurse. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My sister Julia was always the bold one. She was the first to climb trees, the first to speak her mind, the first to break the rules. I was quieter, more cautious, the one who smoothed things over when Julia's temper got her in trouble. As we got older, our paths started to diverge. Julia was the star, popular, outgoing, always surrounded by friends. I was the steady one, the one who stayed home to help Mom, the one who got good grades and followed the rules. But I never resented her. I admired her confidence, her ability to take up space in a world that often felt too big for me. After high school, Julia left for college in the city, chasing dreams of adventure and success. I stayed behind, helping our parents, working at the library, and eventually marrying Tom, a kind man who loved me for my quiet strength. Julia came home for holidays, always with stories of her exciting life, always the center of attention. I was happy for her, or at least I thought I was. When our parents grew older, the responsibility of caring for them fell mostly to me. Julia sent money when she could, but she was busy, too busy, she said, to come home more often. I didn't mind. I loved my parents, and I wanted to be there for them, but sometimes, late at night, I wondered if Julia even noticed how much I was giving up. When Mom passed away, Julia came home for the funeral, sweeping in like a storm. She cried the loudest, hugged everyone, and made grand speeches about family. But when the guests left and the house was quiet, she disappeared back to the city, leaving me to pick up the pieces. Dad's health declined quickly after that, and I became his full-time caregiver. Julia called sometimes, but her visits grew less frequent. I told myself she was busy, that she loved us in her own way. When Dad died, everything changed. Suddenly, there was an estate to settle. A house, some savings, a few family heirlooms. Julia came home, and for the first time, I saw a side of her I'd never seen before. She was cold, calculating, and determined to get what she thought she deserved. "We should sell the house," she said, barely a week after the funeral. "Split everything 50-50. It's only fair." I was stunned. "Julia, this is our home. I've lived here for years. I took care of Mom and Dad. I thought maybe I could stay, keep the memories alive." "We should sell the house," she said, barely a week after the funeral. "Split everything 50-50. It's only fair." I was stunned. "Julia, this is our home. I've lived here for years. I took care of Mom and Dad. I thought maybe I could stay, keep the memories alive." She shrugged, her eyes hard. "You can't afford to buy me out, and I need the money. It's not personal, Evie. It's just business." Those words stung more than I can say. Not personal. How could dividing up our parents' lives, our childhood home, not be personal? But Julia was relentless. She hired a lawyer, sent me formal letters, and started telling anyone who would listen that I was trying to cheat her out of her share. The rumors spread quickly in our small town. People I'd known for years started looking at me differently, whispering behind my back. Julia called relatives, old friends, even the pastor, painting herself as the victim of my supposed greed. I tried to defend myself. But the more I spoke, the more isolated I felt. One night I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Julia's lawyer, threatening legal action if I didn't agree to sell the house immediately. My hands shook as I read it. I felt like I was losing not just my home but my entire family, my history, my sense of self. That was the moment I realized Julia wasn't just fighting for money. She was trying to erase me, from our family, from our story, from everything we had built together. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter, and made a decision. I would not disappear. I would not let my sister rewrite our family's history to suit her needs. I would fight for my home, my memories, and my place in this family, even if it meant standing alone. But I had no idea just how far Julia would go to get what she wanted. The days that followed were some of the loneliest of my life. I felt like a ghost in my own home, haunted by memories of laughter and love that now seemed impossibly distant. Every room held echoes of the past. Mom humming in the kitchen, Dad reading the newspaper by the window, Julia and I playing cards on the living room floor. Now, all I heard was silence, broken only by the occasional ring of the phone or the thud of another letter from Julia's lawyer landing in the mailbox. I tried to keep busy, tending the garden, volunteering at the library, baking bread for the neighbors. But everywhere I went, I felt the weight of judgment. People who used to greet me with warmth now offered tight smiles or avoided my eyes altogether. I heard the whispers, "She's trying to steal the house. Poor Julia, her own sister is cheating her." The rumors stung, but what hurt most was knowing they came from Julia herself. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Parker at the grocery store. She had known our family since I was a child, always quick with a kind word. But this time, her tone was different. "Evelyn, dear, I hope you and Julia can work things out. Family is too precious to lose over money." I forced a smile, blinking back tears. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker. I hope so too." But inside, I was crumbling. I wanted to scream that it wasn't about money, that I would have given Julia anything if she had just asked. What I couldn't give her was my home, my memories, my sense of belonging. I had already sacrificed so much, my career, my freedom, my youth, to care for our parents. Was it so wrong to want to keep the one place that still felt like mine? Julia, meanwhile, was relentless. She called daily, her voice cold and businesslike. "Have you changed your mind yet, Evie? The market's only going to get worse. You're being selfish, you know. Mom and Dad would be ashamed." Her words cut deeper than any lawyer's letter. I tried to reason with her, to remind her of all I had done, but she wouldn't listen. "You're not the only one who lost them," she snapped. "I deserve my share." I started keeping a journal, pouring out my pain and confusion onto the page. I wrote about the sleepless nights, the anxiety that gnawed at my stomach, the fear that I was losing not just my sister, but myself. I wrote about the dreams I had for the house, the garden I wanted to expand, the sunroom I hoped to renovate, the family dinners I still imagined hosting. I wrote about the guilt, too. The nagging voice that wondered if maybe Julia was right, if maybe I was being selfish after all. But every time I thought about giving in, I remembered the promise I made to myself. I would not disappear. I would not let Julia erase me from our family's story. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set, Eleanor stopped by. She brought a loaf of homemade bread and a hug that nearly broke me. "You're not alone, Evelyn," she whispered. "Don't let Julia bully you into giving up what you love." I nodded, grateful for her support. "I just don't know how much more I can take, Ellie. She's turning everyone against me." Eleanor squeezed my hand. "People will believe what they want to believe, but the truth has a way of coming out. You just have to hold on." Her words gave me strength, but the battle was far from over. Julia escalated her campaign, posting on social media about her greedy sister and the injustice she was facing. Old friends unfriended me, relatives stopped calling, and even the pastor at church seemed distant. I felt like I was being erased, bit by bit, from the life I had built. Then, one morning, I received a notice from the court. Julia was suing me for her share of the house, claiming I had manipulated our parents into leaving it to me. The accusation was a lie, but it was enough to drag me into a legal battle I never wanted. I called Mr. Harris, my lawyer, in tears. "I can't do this," I sobbed. "She's destroying me." He was calm and reassuring. "Evelyn, you have rights. You have proof of everything you did for your parents. We'll fight this. But you need to be strong." I nodded, wiping my eyes. I'll try. The weeks that followed were a blur of court dates, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Julia's lawyer painted me as a manipulator, a thief, a heartless woman who had taken advantage of her own family. I sat in the courtroom, listening to the lies, feeling smaller and smaller with every word. But then, something inside me snapped. I realized that if I didn't stand up for myself now, I never would. I took the stand, my hands shaking, and told the truth. I spoke about the years I spent caring for our parents, the sacrifices I made, the love I poured into our home. I spoke about Julia's absence, her choices, her refusal to help. I spoke about the pain of losing not just my parents, but my sister. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in Julia's eyes. That night, I sat on the porch with Eleanor, watching the stars. "You did it, Evie," she said softly. "You refused to disappear." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I believed I could win. The court case dragged on, each hearing a fresh wound. Julia's lawyer was ruthless, digging into every detail of my life, twisting my devotion to our parents into something ugly. He questioned my motives, my sanity, even my love. "Why didn't you move out when your parents died?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Why did you stay in the house alone?" I wanted to scream that it was my home, that I had nowhere else to go, that I had poured my soul into every corner. But instead, I answered calmly, "Because this house is all I have left of them, of us." Julia sat across the courtroom, her face a mask of cold determination. Sometimes I caught her looking at me, not with anger, but with something like regret. But then she would turn away, whispering to her lawyer, her eyes hardening again. I wondered if she ever missed me, if she ever remembered the nights we stayed up talking, the secrets we shared, the promises we made as children to always stick together. The judge listened patiently to both sides. My lawyer, Mr. Harris, presented evidence of my years as caregiver, medical records, receipts, letters from neighbors and friends who had seen me care for Mom and Dad day and night. He showed photos of the house, the garden, the repairs I had made with my own hands. He read aloud the will, written in our father's careful script, leaving the house to me in gratitude for her devotion and sacrifice. Julia's lawyer tried to argue that I had manipulated our parents, that I had isolated them from her, that I had engineered the will. But the evidence was thin, and the judge seemed unconvinced. Still, the process was grueling. Every day, I felt my strength slipping, my resolve tested by the endless accusations and the cold stares from people I once called family. Outside the courtroom, the whispers continued. Some people believed Julia's story, others believed mine. I learned to keep my head high, to walk through town with dignity even when I wanted to hide. Eleanor was always by my side, her presence a shield against the loneliness. "You're not alone, Evelyn," she reminded me. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." But shame is a stubborn thing. Some nights I lay awake replaying every argument, every moment I doubted myself. Was I really being selfish? Was I clinging to the past out of fear? Was I wrong to want to keep the house, the memories, the life I had built? The guilt gnawed at me, but each morning, I forced myself to get up, to keep fighting, to refuse to disappear. One day, after a particularly brutal hearing, Julia cornered me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Her voice was low, almost pleading. "Evie, why are you doing this? Why can't you just let it go?" I stared at her, searching for the sister I once knew. "Because this is my home, Julia. Because I gave up everything to care for Mom and Dad. Because I won't let you erase me." She looked away, her jaw clenched. "You always were the stubborn one." I almost laughed, the sound bitter in my throat. "Maybe, but at least I'm still here." She walked away without another word, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The sister I loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, but I couldn't let that stop me. I had to keep going for myself, for my parents, for the life I had fought so hard to build. The trial dragged on for weeks, each day a new test of endurance. I learned to tune out the lies, to focus on the truth, to trust that the judge would see through the smoke and mirrors. I leaned on Eleanor, on my lawyer, on the small circle of friends who still believed in me. And slowly, I began to feel stronger. I started to see myself not as a victim, but as a survivor. I realized that Julia's betrayal, as painful as it was, could not erase the years of love and sacrifice that defined my life. I was more than her accusations, more than the rumors, more than the pain. One evening, after a long day in court, I sat in the garden and watched the sun set over the old oak tree. The air was warm, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink. I closed my eyes and listened to the birds, letting their song wash over me. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I thought of my parents, of the lessons they taught me about kindness, resilience, and the importance of standing up for what's right. I thought of Julia, of the bond we once shared, and I mourned its loss. But I also knew that I couldn't let her choices define me. As the stars appeared in the sky, I made a promise to myself. I would not disappear. I would not let Julia rewrite our family story. I would fight for my home, my memories, and my place in this world, no matter how hard it got. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, I believed I could win. And that belief, fragile as it was, gave me the strength to face whatever came next. The final days of the trial felt like walking through a storm, every moment charged with tension, every word in the courtroom heavy with consequence. I watched Julia closely, searching for any sign of the sister I once loved. Sometimes, I caught a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a tremor in her voice when she spoke about our childhood. But then she would harden, her face set in determination, and I knew she was too far gone to turn back. The judge called both lawyers into chambers for a final discussion. I sat in the hallway with Eleanor, my hands twisting in my lap, my heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. "You've done everything you can, Evelyn," Eleanor whispered. "No matter what happens, you stood up for yourself. That's more than most people ever do." I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. What if the judge believed Julia's lies? What if I lost the house, the only place that still felt like home? What if, after all this, I really did disappear from my own family's story? When the lawyers returned, Mr. Harris gave me a reassuring nod. "The judge will announce her decision tomorrow morning," he said. "Go home. Try to rest. You've done all you can." That night, I wandered through the house, touching the walls, the photographs, the worn armchair where Dad used to sit. I whispered goodnight to my parents, to the memories that filled every corner. I promised them I would fight for what mattered, that I wouldn't let Julia erase the life we had built together. Sleep was elusive. I lay awake, replaying every moment of the trial, every accusation, every defense. Hot about Julia as a little girl, her hand in mine as we walked to school, her laughter echoing through the house. I wondered if she remembered those days, if any part of her missed the bond we once shared. Morning came too soon. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple dress that reminded me of Mom. Eleanor picked me up, her presence a steady comfort. We drove to the courthouse in silence, the weight of the day pressing down on us. The courtroom was packed. Friends, neighbors, even a few distant relatives had come to hear the verdict. Julia sat across the aisle, her face pale but composed. I tried to meet her eyes, but she looked away. The judge entered, her expression unreadable. She began by summarizing the case, the years I spent caring for our parents, the evidence of my devotion, the will that left the house to me. She acknowledged Julia's claims, her absence, her insistence on a 50-50 split. Then, in a clear, steady voice, the judge delivered her decision. After careful consideration of the evidence and testimony, I find that Evelyn acted out of love and responsibility, not manipulation or greed. The will is valid. The house will remain in her name. Julia is entitled to her share of the remaining estate, but she has no claim to the home. A wave of relief crashed over me. I felt Eleanor squeeze my hand, heard a few people in the gallery sigh with relief. Julia sat frozen, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with disbelief. The judge continued, "This case is a reminder that family is not just about blood or inheritance, but about the choices we make, the sacrifices we honor, and the love we give. I hope both parties can find a way to heal and move forward." As the courtroom emptied, Julia approached me. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, that we might find a way back to each other, but instead, she simply said, "You got what you wanted. I hope you were happy." I looked at her, my heart aching. "I didn't want to fight you, Julia. I just wanted to keep our home. I wanted to remember our family the way it was." She shook her head, her eyes shining with unshed tears. It's too late for that. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the courtroom. I watched her go, mourning not just the loss of my sister, but the loss of the future I had always imagined for us. Eleanor hugged me tightly. You did it, Evie. You refused to disappear. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The battle was over, but the scars would remain. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the stars. The house was quiet, but it felt like mine again. I thought of my parents, of the love and sacrifice that had built this home. I thought of Julia, and I hoped that one day, she would find peace. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to dream of the future, not as a victim, but as a survivor. I had fought for my place in this family, for my memories, for my dignity, and I had won. But I knew the journey wasn't over. Healing would take time. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be a long road, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time. The days after the verdict felt like waking up in a new world. The house was still the same, creaky floors, sunlit kitchen, the scent of old books and fresh flowers, but something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged here, not as a caretaker or a placeholder, but as the rightful keeper of my family's story. Word of the judge's decision spread quickly through town. Some people congratulated me, their voices warm with relief. Others kept their distance, unsure which side to take now that the dust had settled. I tried not to let the whispers bother me. I had spent too long worrying about what others thought. Now, I was determined to live for myself. Eleanor was a constant presence, her laughter filling the house with hope. She brought over paint swatches and gardening catalogs, insisting it was time for a fresh start. Let's make this place yours, Evie, she said, her eyes sparkling. Not just a museum for memories, but a home for your future. We spent afternoons painting the living room a soft blue, planting new roses in the garden, and rearranging furniture to let in more light. Each change felt like a small act of defiance, a way of reclaiming the space Julia had tried to take from me. I hung new photos on the walls, not to erase the past, but to honor it, and to remind myself that I was still here. But healing wasn't easy. Some nights, I woke up from dreams of Julia. Sometimes we were children again, laughing in the backyard. Other times, we were in the courtroom, her eyes cold and distant. I missed her, even after everything. I missed the sister who used to braid my hair, who shared secrets under the covers, who promised we'd always be a team. The grief was sharp, but it was no longer paralyzing. I let myself feel it, then let it pass. One afternoon, as I was weeding the garden, a car pulled into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Julia step out, her posture stiff, her face unreadable. She walked up the path, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, wiping my hands on my jeans. We sat on the porch, the silence between us heavy. "I wanted to say," Julia began, then faltered. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. "I'm sorry, Evie. I let things get out of hand. I was angry, and I took it out on you. I thought if I fought hard enough, I could get back what I lost. But all I did was lose more." Her words caught me off guard. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I wanted to forgive her, to reach across the distance and pull her back into my life. But I also needed to protect myself. "I missed you, Julia," I said softly. "But I can't pretend nothing happened. You hurt me. You tried to erase me." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wanted you to know I'm sorry." We sat in silence, the weight of years pressing down on us. Finally, Julia stood. "Take care of yourself, Evie. You deserve to be happy." As she walked away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Maybe this was the closest we would ever come to reconciliation. Maybe that was enough. In the weeks that followed, I focused on building a new life. I joined a painting class at the community center, started volunteering at the library again, and even took a weekend trip to the coast with Eleanor. Each step felt like a victory, a reminder that I was more than the sum of my losses. The support group I had joined grew, with more women coming forward to share their own stories of family betrayal and survival. We laughed, we cried, and we celebrated each other's victories. I realized that my story was not unique, that there were countless others who had been hurt by the people they loved most. and who had found the strength to keep going. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set, Eleanor joined me with 2 cups of tea. "You know, Evie," she said, "you didn't just win a court case. You won your life back." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my heart. "I'm still here," I whispered. "I refused to disappear." As the stars appeared in the sky, I made a promise to myself. I would keep moving forward, no matter how hard it got. I would honor my parents' memory, cherish the home they left me, and live each day with courage and dignity. The battle with Julia had changed me, but it had not broken me. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to protect my place in this world. And as I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet, I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready to face it, on my own terms. As summer faded into autumn, I found myself settling into a new rhythm. The house, once a battleground, became a sanctuary again. I filled it with fresh flowers, new books, and the scent of bread baking in the oven. I laiso. At the Sunlight Inn, opened the windows and played music that made me want to dance. For the first time in years, I felt at home in my own skin. Eleanor and I spent more time together than ever. We took day trips to nearby towns, explored antique shops, and tried new restaurants. She encouraged me to try things I'd always been too afraid to do, like joining a local choir or signing up for a pottery class. Each new experience was a reminder that life didn't end with betrayal. In fact, sometimes it began there. The support group became a lifeline. Every week, I listened to stories of women who had survived their own storms. Sisters, daughters, mothers, all learning to stand tall after being knocked down. We shared advice, comfort, and hope. I realized that my pain, while unique in its details, was universal in its shape. Betrayal by family is a wound that never fully heals, but it can be transformed into strength. One afternoon, I received a letter from Julia. It was short, written in her familiar, looping script. "Evie, I know I can never undo what I did. I hope you find peace. I hope you find happiness. I'm sorry for everything, Julia." I read it over and over, my heart aching with a mix of sadness and relief. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive her, but I was ready to let go of the anger. I folded the letter and placed it in a box with other memories, some painful, some precious. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about freeing myself from the weight of the past. The seasons changed, and with them, so did I. I painted the sunroom a bright yellow, filled it with plants, and made it my reading nook. I started writing again, not just in my journal, but stories and poems that had been waiting inside me for years. I even submitted a short story to a local magazine, and to my surprise, it was published. Seeing my name in print felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. Henry, my late husband, was never far from my thoughts. Sometimes, I'd sit in the garden and talk to him, telling him about my day, about the battles I'd fought and the victories I'd won. I hoped he would be proud of me, not just for surviving, but for living. The holidays approached, and for the first time, I considered hosting a gathering. I invited Eleanor, a few friends from the support group, and some neighbors who had become like family. The house was filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of people who cared. As I looked around the table, I realized that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, it's about the people who choose to stand by you when the world falls apart. One evening, as I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, Eleanor joined me with 2 mugs of hot cocoa. We watched the stars, the air crisp and clear. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Fighting for the house, for your place in the family?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "No, I regret that it came to this. I regret losing my sister, but I don't regret standing up for myself. For the first time, I feel like I belong, to myself." She smiled, her eyes shining. "You're an inspiration, Evie. You refuse to disappear." Her words warmed me more than the cocoa. I realized that my story, painful as it was, had become a beacon for others. By refusing to be erased, I had given others permission to do the same. As the year drew to a close, I made a promise to myself. I would keep moving forward, keep building a life that was mine, keep choosing hope over fear. I would honor the past, but I would not be trapped by it. And as I watched the first snowflakes drift down, I whispered a quiet thank you, to my parents, to Eleanor, to every woman who had ever fought to be seen. I was still here. I had survived. And I was finally, truly, free. Winter settled over the town, blanketing everything in quiet. The world outside was cold and still, but inside my home, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I spent my days painting, reading, and writing letters to friends old and new. The support group continued to meet, and each week, more women joined us, each with her own story of survival, each refusing to disappear. Eleanor and I became closer than ever. We celebrated small victories together, a new recipe that turned out just right, a story published in the local paper, a day when the pain of the past felt a little lighter. She encouraged me to keep sharing my story, to keep reaching out to others who might be struggling in silence. You never know who needs to hear that it's possible to start over, she said. One afternoon, I received a call from Julia. My heart raced as I answered, unsure what to expect. Her voice was hesitant, softer than I remembered. Evie, I just wanted to say, thank you, for not shutting me out completely, for letting me apologize, even if it's too late. I listened, my emotions a swirl of sadness and hope. Julia, I can't pretend nothing happened, but I don't want to carry anger anymore. I hope you find peace too. There was a long pause, then a quiet, I hope so. We said goodbye, and as I hung up, I felt a strange sense of closure. The wound was still there, but it was healing. The holidays came and went, and for the first time, I didn't dread them. I hosted a small gathering for friends and neighbors, filling the house with laughter, music, and the smell of cinnamon and pine. We shared stories, toasted to new beginnings, and promised to support each other in the year ahead. As the new year dawned, I reflected on everything I had been through. The pain of Julia's betrayal was still real, but it no longer defined me. I had learned to set boundaries, to protect my heart, to value myself for who I was, not just for what I could give to others. I started volunteering at the local senior center, helping others navigate the challenges of aging, loss, and family conflict. I listened to their stories, offered advice when I could, and reminded them that they were not alone. Each time I saw a spark of hope in someone's eyes, I felt my own strength grow. Eleanor and I planned a trip to the coast, something we had talked about for years but never dared to do. We walked along the beach, collecting shells and laughing like schoolgirls. The ocean air was crisp and bracing, and as I stood at the water's edge, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known since childhood. One evening, as we watched the sun set over the waves, Eleanor turned to me and said, "You know, Evie, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're showing all of us that it's never too late to reclaim your life." Her words stayed with me. I realized that my journey wasn't just about holding on to a house or a name. It was about refusing to let anyone erase my story. It was about choosing to live, to love, and to hope, even after the deepest wounds. As winter melted into spring, I planted new flowers in the garden, each one a symbol of resilience and renewal. I opened the windows, let in the fresh air, and filled the house with music and laughter. I invited friends over for tea, hosted book club meetings, and painted the sunroom in bright, joyful colors. The pain of Julia's betrayal would always be a part of me, but it no longer controlled my life. I had learned to forgive, not just her, but myself. I forgave myself for the years I spent doubting my worth, for the times I stayed silent, for the moments I let fear dictate my choices. And as I stood in the garden, watching the first daffodils bloom, I whispered a promise to myself. I will never let anyone make me feel invisible again. I will protect my heart, my home, and my happiness, no matter what. Spring brought a sense of renewal I hadn't felt in years. The garden burst into color, birds returned to the trees, and the air was filled with the promise of new beginnings. I spent my mornings tending the flowers, my afternoons painting in the sunroom, and my evenings sharing stories and laughter with friends. The house, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe. Eleanor and I took our trip to the coast, walking along the shoreline with the wind in our hair and the salt on our lips. We talked about everything and nothing, about the past and the future, about the women we had become. "You know, Evie," she said as we watched the waves crash against the rocks, "you didn't just survive, you created a new life. You refused to disappear." Her words echoed in my heart. I realized that my story was not just about loss, but about resilience. Not just about betrayal, but about the courage to choose myself, even when it meant standing alone. One afternoon, I received a letter from Julia. This time, it was longer, more thoughtful. She wrote about her own struggles, her regrets, and her hope that one day we could find a way back to each other. She apologized again, not just for the court battle, but for all the years she let pride and anger get in the way of our bond. I read the letter several times, tears streaming down my face. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive her completely, but I was ready to let go of the pain. I wrote back, telling her that I wished her peace, that I hoped she would find happiness, and that I would always remember the good times we shared as sisters. The support group continued to grow, and I found myself becoming a mentor to others who were struggling with family betrayal. I listened to their stories, offered advice, and reminded them that they were not alone. Each time I saw someone find their strength, I felt my own resolve deepen. As the months passed, I realized that I had built a new family, a family of friends, neighbors, and women who understood what it meant to fight for your place in the world. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories together. We laughed, we cried, and we lifted each other up. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set, Eleanor joined me with 2 glasses of wine. We toasted to survival, to friendship, to the power of refusing to disappear. "You know, Evie," she said, "your story is going to help so many people. You showed us all that it's never too late to stand up for yourself." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "I hope so, Eleanor. If even one person finds the courage to fight for themselves because of my story, it will all have been worth it." As the stars appeared in the sky, I thought about my parents, about Julia, about the journey that had brought me here. I realized that I was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I had found: strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief that I mattered. And now, I want to ask you, the one listening to my story, what would you do if someone you loved tried to erase you from your own family? Would you fight for your place, or would you let yourself disappear? I want to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments. If my story moved you, please like this video. It helps more people find hope when they need it most. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories of betrayal, survival, and the courage to choose yourself. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You might just give them the strength to refuse to disappear. With all my heart, thank you for listening. Until next time.